Hello everybody and welcome to my ranking of Doctor Who Season 11, the 5 stories from the final season of Jon Pertwee as the Doctor, and pretty much the end of the Barry Letts and Terran Sticks era of the show. Before we get started, here's just a couple of quick things. Firstly, this is my list. It is my opinion. You probably won't agree with me with the positions of some of these stories, and that is perfectly fine so long as we both know that going in and just have fun with it. If you'd like, you're welcome to leave your ranking down below just so that I know what you think of these stories. And with that said, let's waste no more further time and just get started with this ranking. Planet of the Spiders. This one is just the one I found least to like in. I think that it wastes some time in the middle and there are some rather bland settings. It very much feels like run-of-the-mill Jon Pertwee story, number 24 for a lot of it, which is kind of a shame because it is his final one, and as you can see, it's at the bottom of this ranking, which is kind of a shame. There's sequences in this that are just like 10 minutes of action and running, and it doesn't feel like the story has very much direction to it. There's also some unfortunate racism with these white actors portraying these non-white characters, which is very yikes, and fortunately wouldn't be done today in the show, but unfortunately was done then. That stuff definitely doesn't hold up, but there's also a lot more about this one that just doesn't really connect with me. It also feels like the story just does things for the sake of being able to have the plot work. For example, Yates is in this one, he introduces Sarah Jane to a character which kind of helps to propel the story, and then it also comes back around later. There's a couple of things in here that very much feel like the only reason they're a part of the story is because the writers needed it to go somewhere. So they're like, oh, how can we have Sarah Jane get introduced to somebody? I don't know, I guess maybe Yates could introduce her? It's so strange. I talked more about this in my review, but there's just a few things in here that don't fully work for me, which is a shame and really holds this one back from being a truly great regeneration story. That said, the final few moments with this character are really great. It works. It's a good goodbye. There is one aspect to that scene which slightly sours it, which I also talk about in my review, but regardless, it is a solid send-off to this incarnation of the Doctor, and overall, it is an enjoyable story, even though there is a fair amount that I didn't like about it.
Presenting to you that exotic Turkish delight of the East, Sherazade.
The Monster of Peladon. That's right, this one is not coming last because it's pretty enjoyable. It is certainly a little bit too long, but I feel like it has enough elements within here to at least be entertaining for the majority of its runtime. It totally could have been a 4-part story, and it's probably a shame that it wasn't, but I found myself enjoying the different political aspects that are brought into this one, and I like seeing the Doctor just so immediately side with workers as they fight for their rights. I don't feel like I have as much to say about this one as the previous story because it isn't as important, it isn't as monumental. I do like the setting of this one for the most part, and I think they did some interesting stuff with reintroducing this particular location some 50 or so years later, however much longer it was, I can't remember. So while it's nothing incredible, at the end of the day, there was a fair amount to enjoy, and I liked it.
We shall expect a full report of their behaviour and of their presence on Peladon.
Of course, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty.
Well, I don't think that's good enough. What about an apology for the...
Don't come with me, please.
Death to the Daleks. This is a weird one to rank because I liked the first half a lot more than the second half, and I think it has so many interesting things that it does in that first half that it just fails to follow through on, like introducing the Daleks and having them not be able to use their weapons. That's such a cool idea. The Daleks, all they do is kill things that aren't like them. So what are they going to do when that's not something that they're able to accomplish? Well, they just get their weapons back pretty quickly, so the story just kind of squanders that potential, which is a shame. I like a lot of the atmosphere in that first part, and I really enjoyed seeing our characters go around all of these different locations, but the second half makes a lot of questionable choices, which really don't work for me, and sour a lot of what was done earlier in the story. It is such a shame because I feel like this could have genuinely been a really solid Dalek story, but it just isn't, which is honestly quite disappointing to me because there was some promise here, especially early on, and by the end of it, it's such a mixed experience, it's hard to know where to put in this list, but at the end of the day, things like having a Dalek commit suicide really soured this experience for me because it feels like it adds so little and there's no reason for it. It doesn't even make sense at all. And it just feels like that was done because, oh, the story is called Death to the Daleks. Let's kill some, I guess. Even if it doesn't actually fit within the story in any way that makes sense. If you want to see the full extent of my complicated feelings on this episode, then you can check out my review, but I'll just leave it at this for now because while there was a lot that took this one back for me, there was also a lot that I enjoyed, especially early on, so I guess it makes sense that this ends up at the middle of the ranking. Invasion of the Dinosaurs. You know what? I liked it. There's a lot of fun to be had in here. It's not a great story. It definitely loses some of its steam in the second half, but there is a fair amount to enjoy early on as the Doctor and Sarah Jane just end up in this setting, which is great, of just London completely barren. I really liked that and found this issue they have with the dinosaurs just showing up to be quite intriguing, and I like the way that it is used throughout the story. There are a couple of decisions characters make which doesn't really make sense. I also don't like the way that Mike Yates is used in this one and think it doesn't fit with what we've seen in the character before, so that's a shame. The ending also feels kind of rushed, as if there wasn't a way to end it that makes sense, so they ended it in a way that just doesn't make any sense, which, you know, again, is a shame. But there are also some really interesting things done with the setting and the location that a character is in, and them not entirely knowing everything about what's going on and where they even are. I really liked those elements of the story, and I really liked basically a lot of the first half when we're getting introduced to everything. And while things certainly get less interesting as it goes on, it is still a fun and enjoyable story that is one of the better ones from this season.
Good grief. Luther charged with stolen furs, jewelry, and money?
The Time Warrior introduced this season, and it was the best one from here. There was a really well done execution of this introduction to a companion. It is the final one for Jon Pertwee, Sarah Jane Smith, and right from the bat, I did quite like her. I liked the combative nature that they had in their relationship, and also how quickly they came to enjoy each other's presence. That was quite fun, and that was one of the reasons that they worked so well for me. If they had not enjoyed each other's company for this entire thing, maybe I wouldn't have enjoyed the story as much. That's a very difficult thing to actually pull off. But instead, they have the lead characters come around to each other rather quickly, which makes for just a fun, enjoyable experience throughout not only the rest of the season, but the rest of this story in particular. Also, Lynx is probably the best villain from this season, and I really like this whole Lone Sontaran angle that this thing has. That was very interesting, and I love how he's just messing about, basically, in this time period for fun. He's quite a solid villain, and from the Sontaran stories I've seen, this is certainly one of the better ones. The setting is also pretty good too. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it, but it works effectively for what's going on here, and also because it is a period piece, it feels a little bit more realistic than some of the sci-fi stuff that we'll see in the show. I mean, you can tell it's TV, but the wardrobes and things feel a lot more extensive, like they have a lot more to work with because they did, and I think that definitely helps. It is certainly an enjoyable story, and to me, the highlight of this season. And that is that, my ranking for Doctor Who Season 11. Oddly enough, I realized in making this ranking that I enjoy each story from this season less than the previous, which is kind of a weird thing to realize. There's not even a huge difference between how much I enjoy, say, Planet of the Spiders or Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I mean, I definitely like Invasion of the Dinosaurs more. I even gave it a higher rating, but not by that much. So it's just kind of interesting that this is how the ranking turned out. Feel free to leave your ranking down below if you feel like doing so, and I do hope to see you around soon for my ranking of the top 10 third Doctor stories coming out soon. That is an exciting video where I will talk about just my favorites from Jon Pertwee's run as the Doctor. And after that, we are right onto the Tom Baker era, which I am of course looking forward to, even though it is a shame to have to say goodbye to such a great Doctor. And with all of that said, I hope to see you around for some of those videos, but if not, that is totally fine, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, take care, and have a lovely week.